my style is I look for the kind of opportunity that has great fundamentals, attractive valuation, and also come with high certainty. How I think about portfolio composition. I think it is critical that we mentally separate two concepts. One is payoffs. One is odds, ODDS, odds. Younger generation, I think across the world, there are a lot of surveys coming up. People just don't like cook. People like convenience. People like just ordering in. People like go to restaurant. Cooking is increasingly become a special habit that certain people enjoy, but it's a special habit. It's increasingly become that.
Dear viewers of Good Investing Talks, it's great to have you back on the podcast, and it's great to welcome Jackson Zhu from New York. He's an emerging manager and an investor with Square Street Capital. Great to have you here, Jackson.
Tillman, good to see you again.
Jackson, there's one interesting story around you that is fun to listen to. It's about the oil and the negative oil price in 2020 and you. So maybe you can share it also with this audience to learn a bit more what you did at this time.
Oh yeah, so it was an investment opportunity that I predicted in early 2020. Many of you probably remember oil price collapsed during the beginning of the pandemic. At that time, I was able to predict in advance oil price become negative. It was an unusual opportunity, and it was just too good to let go. And I'm still very glad that I was able to seize that unusual opportunity. And I think it's probably the first time in history that a major physical asset trade into the negative zone. So it's quite unusual.
How did you see it? What led you to see this opportunity?
Actually, to be frank, in the beginning, I was thinking about buying oil because it was too cheap. But I was mulling it over and over again, just like I do, that's my thinking process. I suddenly realized an asset sometimes can flip to become a liability. And in this case, I think I was in between sleep and awake, laying on the bed, and suddenly the idea came to me that if there is a negative sign attached to the price, it becomes negative. And I did some quick research, and I realized the supply and demand relationship during that time was a physical relationship. We were running out, the world was running out of storage for oil. And that piece of fact, a physical fact, was almost certainly going to drive oil price into negative. So that's what drove me, enlightened me to that idea.
At this time, you were an analyst, if I'm right, working as an analyst.
Yeah, I was in my prior career. So do you want me to give you a quick introduction on my background, or do you want me to talk about that specific?
No, I'm just curious here. Did this kind of oil trade help you to start out as an emerging manager?
Oh yeah. So at that time, to your question, fully answer your question, I was working as an institutional allocator. I was on the other side of the table. My full-time job was interviewing and researching hedge fund managers. Now I run an investment business myself as an investor. And to your question, I think the negative oil experience did help me. It helped me on more of a philosophical level because I've been investing since high school, but I always had an idea that most institutions and investors has so much resources available to them that for small investors, there is almost no way to compete. But a negative oil experience told me it's actually not that clear-cut a picture. I don't have any oil experience. I don't have any energy experience. And I was able to see in advance negative oil because exactly I don't have any background. I was able to think out of the box. After the negative oil prediction, there was actually an investor call me up on the phone. And if I remember correctly, he told me, Jackson, listen, if you have ever worked for an oil and gas hedge fund, or if you have consulted industry expert, you would never come to this prediction of negative oil. That brought me to a higher level of understanding of what's important and what drives great investment ideas. So to your question, it does help.
And does this background as an allocator also make you different as an investor? And if so, how compared to other investors you see?
That's a very good question, Tillman. Do you want a long answer or do you want a short answer?
Start with the short, and if it's more interesting, I dive deeper.
All right, so I give you a short answer. So the short answer is, in the beginning, I thought it was not going to be helpful because I do not have formal full-time work experience with any direct investment institutions, such as any active direct managers. I do not. So in the beginning, I thought it's going to be a handicap on me. Now, as I have ventured out for several years on my own, I increasingly realize my experience working as an allocator is a tremendous asset for me because I was interviewing, evaluating, asking questions to hundreds and hundreds of probably the smartest and most hardworking investor on this planet. I was able to see how each talented investor think, how they strategize, how they make mistakes, how they recover from mistakes, and how they try to beat the market, even though it's a very difficult game. So it's a very high level experience for me evaluating many other managers. And I was able to distill some important lessons from the allocator experience and apply those lessons at what I'm doing now.
Maybe at another one of your learnings that might be a bit more surprising to listeners who are passionate investors and already run a fund, maybe that it's more one of the sophisticated insights you took away from the allocator perspective.
You want a sophisticated one?
Yeah.
Let me put in one here. It may be a little bit of debatable, and many of the audience listening now, you may strongly disagree. Okay, but let me put it out there. I might be wrong, but let me just make an attempt here. It has become increasingly obvious to me that successful active investing cannot be systematically taught. That's a piece of insight. And why do I think so? I'm not saying this to discourage anybody from investing. It's an empirical observation I've made. And the reason behind this observation is the following. One, if successful active investing can be systematically taught, then why don't we see any specific educational institution has a long-term great track record of continuously and consistently produce superior investors that can outperform index? We have great institutions with great names, but in terms of producing investors as a track record, I think this is debatable. The second is, if successful investing can be systematically taught, why we have so many investment books being published year over year? One book should be enough. The third is, if successful investing can be systematically taught, then in the investment industry, why do we not see any family dynasty? Meaning father, mother pass down the generations into the children and grandchildren. For example, in politics, we have the Kennedy family. In medicine, we have the Mayo Clinic, Mayo family. In music, we have the Bach family, classical music. But in investing, we don't have. You can think about it. Do you know any successful investor who have a long-term successful investment track record? Their children also have a long-term successful investment track record, and their grandchildren. So between parents and children, they share similar genetics. And if parents cannot pass anything to their children and produce a family dynasty, I'm not sure successful investing can be systematically taught. So I think that is a piece of deeper insight I'd like to share. I understand it may trigger some feeling in some audience. I understand it's probably debatable. I'm also fully open-minded in that probably in the future I realize this is totally a wrong assessment, and I will acknowledge I'm wrong.
Let's take the learnings to another step. How have they helped you to make your firm different?
That's a very good question. What I realize is because the industry is highly competitive, because very few investors has truly long-term track record. One of the realization I realized is those conventional elements that people call them an edge probably doesn't matter as much as we think they do. For example, we see investors competing on corporate access. We see investors competing on having the most amount of alternative data like credit card receipts, etc. We see investors competing on many other metrics. I realize they may not matter that much at all, because otherwise those who pursue on those dimensions should have consistently outperformed others. But we don't see this kind of pattern. So to me, back to your question, in my own investment journey, in my own investment process, I try to do things that make sense, that can generate great returns. And I give you some more narrowly defined example. For example, when I look at investment opportunities, I like to think about whether an investment opportunity is actually researchable or not. Because there can be a lot of companies or ideas that no matter, for example, I'm a smaller shop or a large shop, no matter how much time and resources you put on, we still can't understand it, or we still can't predict its future trajectory with high certainty. So that's one example I'm trying to give you is the industry is competitive. People have a lot of resources. A lot of people are doing something very similar or working very hard. But we have to take one step back and do things that only make sense in order to have a fair chance to generate a strong investment results.
What kind of goal are you trying to achieve?
So I interpreted your question as the kind of goals I'm trying to achieve when I ventured out on my own. I think the very important goal is generating investment returns. And I expanded a little bit here. Let me do it. I think in investing as a business, it has two phases. One, investing is investing for investment performance. On the other side of the phase is investing as a business. When we look at different people in the industry, some put more emphasis on running investing as a business, meaning there's fees to generate income, there's client relationship to be maintained, and there is an overarching brand and all the things attached to it. And on the other hand, is a pure investing as a craft that trying to generate superior returns. I see that distinction from very early on. And my goal, to your question, of venturing out on my own is to focus as much as I can on the pure investing side, meaning aim for great investment results.
You'd already touched base on some elements of your investing style, but maybe how would you describe your current style of investing? Is it a value investing influence style, or how would you describe it?
I understand the conventional definition of value versus growth. And there are many different dimensions people use to categorize themselves. Let me give you this short definition that I find that describe my style the best at this moment. Obviously, I put a big caveat. I want to be an investor that continue to learn, so my style may evolve. But answer your question. At this moment, my style is I look for the kind of opportunity that has great fundamentals, attractive valuation, and also come with high certainty. That's a big three. And I have two small ones to attach to it. The most ideal opportunity, I can't ask for it because most opportunities cannot. The most ideal opportunity has two additional to it. They can be independently verified and independently tracked. So big three and plus two small ones. That's how I currently, how I would like to currently describe my approach.
Let's go into one of these big threes. How do you get to certainty?
Yeah, so I understand certainty describe a concept that doesn't have a very certain definition. I think there are two English words that probably describe certainty better than others. The first one, I would say it is visibility. Just like if you are driving in a bad weather, we can't see too far out. That's low visibility. If you are driving in a sunny day, it's much easier for you to drive because you can see. That describes one aspect of certainty. In real life, I think empirically, for example, try to predict company turnaround story is very hard. The company get into some troubles, the product get into some troubles. They try to engage a new management team. They try to do different creative things. And then we try to, like as investors, we will try to predict those turnaround. Generally, we can say, not absolute for sure, generally we can say those are low visibility. But in some cases, either the investor himself has special background, special knowledge, or the case itself presented in a certain way that has high visibility. So to your question, the first word is visibility. The second word I like to use, and I don't think they're pretty similar to visibility, is the word predictability. Is something highly predictable. And I give you an obvious example of what is predictability. For example, Tillman, you and I, we're going to have a bet on whether 60 days from now it's going to rain in Berlin. Or we make another bet. 60 days from now, the exact temperature, 2 p.m. in the afternoon in Berlin. Those would be extremely unpredictable. I think even today with all the modern technology, maybe with AI it's already resolved, I don't know. Short-term weather, extremely unpredictable. However, if Tillman, you and I, we have a different kind of bet. I'm going to bet you over the next 3 years, summer is going to be warmer than winter in Berlin. This kind of bet, I can make a very, very large bet on it because it's highly predictable. So this is what I mean by predictability. Even the same subject matter, weather, climate. If you see it differently, it has different predictability. So to your question, wrap it up, high certainty. My current thinking and my current answer is it is highly visible and highly predictable.
Can you maybe give a bit of an elaboration based on a case of a company? So we will talk later about DoorDash. Feel free to use this on DoorDash, but another company where your work you did to get to visibility and certainty?
Sure. I give you a quick one. It was before I ventured out on my own, when I was still personally investing. It's Airbus, the European company Airbus. And again, I'm just recalling from my memory. Some of the numbers may be wrong, but it should be roughly in this shape. So it was also during pandemic that Airbus stock collapsed, like many other travel companies or many other businesses in general. I would recall Airbus stock price collapsed probably from 90 or 100 to 49 euro a share within a very short period of time. I'm recording this from memory. The number could be slightly off. And to me, Airbus is a high certainty investment candidate. And where does that certainty come from? Several bits of common sense. One, we know civil aviation is a high certainty, high growth industry. No matter which country you come from, no matter where you come from, as people get wealthier, they want to jump on an airplane and see the world. In professional term, the growth curve of civil aviation resembles the global GDP curve with probably a little bit of faster speed. That's in professional term. In layman term, I just explained. Second, I always think, like when I was younger, it's also another intuitive common sense, is there are a number of companies, not that many, that are critically important for human civilization. One of it is Airbus. If we remove Airbus, so let's say we wake up tomorrow, Airbus disappeared from this planet, we will get into some issues as a human civilization, meaning we won't have enough planes being produced. We still have Boeing. As we all know, Boeing has been in trouble for quite a long period of time in terms of the manufacturing, etc. We will have not enough supply for new airplanes to replenish the fleet around the world. And human travel will get into troubles. I think if you and I jump on a boat, try to beat each other, I think no one will opt for that option. So Airbus is a critical infrastructure for human civilization. And that is where certainty coming from. And I can dive into the specific financials, for example, in terms of the price earnings, in terms of the size of the order books they have. This company was cheaply valued with huge visibility into their future revenue and extreme high certainty. So that is my answer to your question.
Hey, Tilman here. It's great that you've made it that far into the video. And I think it shows a certain passion for investing you're having. If you want to dive deeper and go further down the rabbit hole, you're invited to apply to my community, Good Investing Plus. It's a place that's very helpful to people who are ambitious about investing. It's helpful to investment talent as well as experienced fund managers. So if you're interested, please click on the link below. And now, without further ado, enjoy the conversation. Another question I want to raise is, like you already mentioned, like these three components plus the two reflected in your research process. What are like your most important aspects of this? Where do you spend most time off in your research process when an interesting idea gets so good that it might turn into investment for you?
So you're asking like among
your allocation of time and research depth, where would you say this is my strongest part that you want to research?
Got it. I think there's I want to answer your question. It's an abstract question, and I want to answer it in two ways. The first is I want to comment a little bit on my own research process. It's writing heavy. And second, I want to talk about the importance of coming to an aha moment in investing. So one, my research process is writing heavy. I truly enjoy writing. As I mentioned a bit earlier on this interview, I don't know if I did, since I was in graduate school, I've been writing a personal blog. I have a passion for writing. I took history class. I enjoy, and reading is basically a part of the writing process. I enjoy reading, I enjoy writing. So my research process is writing heavy. I read, for example, for the major company I invest in, I read everything I can find about the company. Thank you for sure. Different announcements. I watch all the podcast interviews of the founding team and key management members. I write summaries, try to distill what's said and what's not said, what's seemingly important and what's said and what's not important. So the writing process, I think, have several benefits. One, a large quantum of writing activities is an effective discipline mechanism to discipline my thinking. Without writing, sometimes the thinking process are not disciplined, are not analytical. Writing has a certain feature, just like geometry, actually. Things has to square up. When we make a voice thinking process, when we just talk, sometimes things doesn't necessarily square up. But if you write it down, it has certain geometry, mathematical relationship to it. You have to establish your case and make an analytical argument, and things has to close up on itself. So that's the importance of writing. One more is writing is basically an effective tool to filter out noise from signal. Because when I write, I don't know if other people experienced like this. When I was writing, I'm able to see what is noise, meaning it doesn't really matter, and what is signal. So that's the importance of writing. And the second part is aha moments, or you call it epiphany, or you call it the moment of transcendence, the moment of enlightenment. I find it to be hugely important in investing. Back to what I said before, maybe a little bit repetitive, but I think it's definitely true. The investing industry has attracted some of the most hardworking and most talented people to work on the same problem, meaning try to find investment opportunities and try to generate returns. Everybody's working hard. How to constantly get ahead is very hard. Therefore, I think any kind of book knowledge, standard mechanical way of repetitive execution may not perfectly work in a human-to-human, highly competitive environment. In this kind of thinking game, competitive thinking game, it is the moment of transcendence, the moment of the aha moments, the epiphanies that really make a difference. And I just share with you the negative oil experience, which I was laying on the bed in between sleep and awake. This idea came to me. I remember it was a visual image when I was closing my eyes, asset and liability switch. And I realized you can add a negative sign to a price. So I saw that vision first in my head when I was closing my eyes. I jumped out of the bed and went to research right here and see that picture and validate that picture. So those moments are very, very rare. I don't think, maybe somebody can, but I can't get this kind of realization every single day. It is grounded, I think, on a large volume of reading, a large volume of writing, and a lot of life experiences as well. Experiencing life, for example, if you're researching consumer companies, go out onto the street, do some window shopping, do some real shopping, and interact with life. And sometimes those moments will come.
Let's maybe go back to 2020, 2021, when we were still like the private investor Jackson, and now you're the professional investor Jackson. What has changed in the research process since then, and where have you put way more effort into?
I think I have versus the prior me, today's me. And first of all, today's me is not a fixed me. And I will try very hard to prevent my mind and my process become ossified into a fixed state and I can't develop. I'll make sure very hard. I'll make sure that I don't get stuck in a defined process. I think that's really important because there is one investment philosophy for time, but there's no one philosophy for all time. Things I think has to evolve and has to change. So that's an opening remark to your question. Versus the old me, I would say today's me relies a bit more on a certain structure and framework to guide my thinking process. And today's me also understand better about how my own mind works. So the structure and framework. My undergrad is accounting, and I later self-trained myself into become a coder. So I'm very familiar, at least with spreadsheets, and also with processing big data and writing some codes to speed up the process. So that give me a set of skills that I can easily build tools and templates to speed up my own investment process. So for example, this year, so now we are talking already late into 2024. This year, I can recall that I have refreshed several templates, built new templates, and also wrote some. I no longer write very long software codes. No, I don't. I used to do that, but this year I also wrote some pretty short snippets of codes just to do some repetitive work for me. Basically, having the semiconductor and computer do the work for me. So I rely on that a bit more than I was in my prior state. Second point, I developed a deeper understanding of myself. Like I said, investing is a thinking game. It, to some degree, in some sense, is highly abstract. It's highly abstract. You can even say it's basically just making decision what to buy, what to sell. So the state of a person's mind and a person's own understanding of how his or her mind works is critical. I give you some examples. And this is something I learned when I was an allocator. People are smart, people are hardworking. Why so few investors has great long-term track record? There are many answers to it, but from mental perspective, from how a mind works, I realized an interesting insight is in investing, the output of investment performance and the input of a person's mind is not linear as it is in other industry. For example, Tillman, you and I, we go and open a bakery shop. We make bread and we sell bread.
Don't compete against the German in this. Don't compete against the German.
So I partner with you to run a bakery shop. So let's say we run a bakery shop, we are partners. And one day, Jackson, me, I come in feeling sad, grumpy, and spacey. Okay, I'm just not focused. I can still work. I can still go into the kitchen. I can do the bread. Okay, I can press the ovens, the electric ovens. So in most industries, a person's mental state doesn't have a tremendous amount of relationship to the final output. You put in the hours, you get some outcome. I just use bakery as one obvious example. The bread gonna taste more or less the same. In investing, there's a very unusual relationship between a person's mental state and final investment outcome. Let's say you and I run a partnership to invest money, hypothetically.
Don't do it with me. That's not a good idea, but pick another person.
Okay, let's say somebody partner up to run a investment business. They invest money. If a person come into the office one day feeling not right, feeling sad, feeling not focused, are you going to trust his or her judgment and investment decision during that day? If he still or she still pull the trigger of making buy and sell decisions, we all understand it's not going to be good. It's when a person is not feeling right, the investment decision not be good. And in investing, not good means lose money. Not only you're not making progress, actually losing money, backtracking. Not only not producing bread, you are deleting bread. You are losing money. So that's terrible. Then
a negative bread price. No, just
a negative bread. That's it in investing. Making investment mistake is basically negative. It pulls back from making further progress. Then how about if you have a partner coming to the office that day feeling just normal, then that is basically the normal state of almost all other hardworking investor and analysts. And as we have already talked about before, very few investors can produce consistent outperformance results. So if person feeling normal is just the par, and with all the different fees and expense involved, it's probably a little bit of subpar. Then the final point I'm trying to say is only if you have, or this hypothetical example, we have analysts or we have a partner who can consistently execute at a very heightened mental state with very high self-awareness, very high mental clarity, understand all the companies, all the news, all the text he's reading, all the phone calls, or he or she is participating on those phone calls, understand what's important, what's not important, what's common sense, what's not common sense, what is apparently funny, but deeply insightful, being able to tell A from B. Then great investment insights can be generated, and hopefully great investment decisions can be made. So that is the unusual relationship between the mental state and outcome. In investing, it's very unusual. In many other industries, not all, I would say, don't use the absolute word, but in many industries, there's not that kind of relationship in existence.
I already talked about in the stock we want to discuss here in this program, and it's DoorDash. So what is your investment thesis on DoorDash? You're currently still invested in the company?
Yeah, so I am currently invest in the stock DoorDash. It's a long position.
But you could change your mind at any time if there's a aha moment?
Yes, and I want to make sure, I make it very clear, this is not financial advisory for anybody. I'm not giving financial advice, and I may change my idea any moment going forward. So DoorDash as a business, I mean, there's a distinction between a stock and a business. People can invest in great business at extreme valuation, that's a stock, and can end up either not making money for a very long time or losing money. The valuation piece, the stock price come in to separate a business from a stock. So let's first talk about a business. So DoorDash is a great business, and I've been following this company for quite a few years. I mean, let me know if any aspect you want me to talk into. And very quickly, when I look at DoorDash many years ago, it's a great business. Why is great? Food, eating is probably the single most frequent consumption activity for human beings. You think about it. What other activities in our daily lives are more frequent? I would say there are two. Breathing, we breathe air in and out, and go to bathrooms. I don't think breathing so far has been commercialized into a product that you have to pay and swipe your credit card every time you breathe. No, I don't think it has. Going to bathroom. I think in some countries, there are some bathroom businesses, but at large, in general, going to bathrooms have not been made into a business at large. Eating, then, likely to be the most frequent human activity. That's actually a business. So that is a big aha moment for me. We eat 3 times, or some people eat 2 times a day, or some people on a special diet eat 1 time a day, but people eat, let's say 3 times a day. You don't order a taxi most time. I don't think anybody orders a taxi 3 times a day. No one orders from an e-commerce website for 3 times a day. Nothing else do 3 times a day. So that is the aha moment. Let me realize this is a special business. And to add to it, increasingly, people don't like cooking. I think our parental generation or our grandparent generation, for the lack of restaurant industry development, and also for the conventional lifestyle, people generally cook. Younger generation, I think across the world, there are a lot of surveys coming out. People just don't like cook. People like convenience. People like just ordering in. People like go to restaurant. Cooking is increasingly become a special habit that certain people enjoy, but it's a special habit. It's increasingly becomes that than a daily norm. So there's those human elements that is not on the income statement or balance sheets, that's not on the 10K 10Qs, that constitute this aha moment and really let me realize it's a very special business that has certain human behavioral elements that's strongly supporting it. So I think that's what make DoorDash a great business that attract my attention in the first place. And the other part, as a stock, I just do want to make sure I made it very, very clear. First, I'm not giving financial advice to anybody. And also, I may change my mind anytime. DoorDash has been wildly successful as a business. It was under a lot of doubt in its early years and up until probably a year ago or 2 years ago. Over the past year or two, the apparent and very obvious business success DoorDash as a business has increasingly convinced a larger and larger group of investors that this is actually a good business. And as you can imagine, as more people get convinced, more people will comfortably invest in DoorDash stock and therefore push up the stock price. So today, I don't think any sensible investor will make an absolute judgment call saying DoorDash is a cheap stock anymore. How expensive that is, that's a separate topic, and people can use different theories or different future scenarios to assign a different valuation framework to it, but it's no longer a cheap stock. And the investor has to execute a much higher level of caution when they are dealing with a not cheap stock. So that's what I want to say.
What is your future scenario?
For DoorDash, the business? Okay, so I'm not talking about DoorDash, the stock. Let's talk about DoorDash as a business. The future scenario is the younger generation gonna increasingly cook less and less. The kind of people who still cook will increasingly see cooking as a special habit. And most people will have someone else to cook for them. So the demand for food delivery will continue to grow. Or in professional term, the penetration has a high chance to keep increasing in this country and probably around the world as well. That is one. On the adjacent new categories such as grocery delivery, convenience delivery, or even in general retail, there is certain signal. There's some signal that there is some possibility those new verticals can grow into large businesses as well. But it is, I think, still too early to make as convincing a prediction as those kind of predictions for food delivery is. We can remain hopeful on the new verticals, but we need to see. Then the other area I think is notable is autonomous driving. Listen, for food delivery. I'm not talking about for calling a taxi or ride sharing. That obviously has been widely discussed. Autonomous driving for food delivery, I think gonna be, let me use the word, I think gonna be potentially nuclear huge for food delivery. Why? The reason that food delivery as a business has traditionally has a stigma as a low margin business is because finding a human to spend 20, 30 minutes of his or her time to drive to a restaurant, wait for the food, grab the food and drive to your doorway and drop off the food. It's very expensive. Paying somebody for his or her 20 minutes or 30 minutes of time doing that task I just described. With autonomous driving, obviously I'm not issuing an opinion on how likely we'll have autonomous driving or when we're going to have it. But assuming we wake up tomorrow, Tillman, you and I will wake up, autonomous driving is 100% completely, fully resolved. Then you can imagine a future where in the downtown area, where all the restaurant cluster, you're going to have those robotic vehicle that's parked there and say DoorDash or say some food delivery company's name on it. You will have restaurants who are cooking food, receive those orders, get food ready. The restaurant server will bring those bags of food and drop it into this vehicle. And this vehicle is parked in front of a group of restaurants. Then this vehicle, every 10 minutes, and there will be many of them, every 10 minutes, one vehicle gonna leave, or maybe every 5 minutes, I'm just saying, for example, regularly, they're gonna leave and drive towards a cluster of consumer who ordered those food that are now already cooked and in those vehicles. You're gonna drive to the collection point of where the customers are, and then you will have a food delivery driver that wait for that vehicle to come, grab, 5, 10, 20 of food, and then drop them in this building or in this neighborhood. So this kind of delivery model, as you can imagine, gonna be economically massively different from the kind of model that we currently have. Yes, we have some kind of order batching, meaning one food delivery driver now can pick up more than one bag of food for one trip, but it's not at that kind of scale as the hypothetical scenario I just described to you. Once that happens, the entire economics will look very, very different for food delivery, meaning it is likely that food delivery as a business will be massively more profitable than it is today. So that is the autonomous driving part.
But right now the company is still loss-making, if I'm not wrong.
At this moment, DoorDash for its food delivery part of the business, has been profitable for quite a long time. Other food delivery business, some are profitable, some are not. So it's a mixed picture. Yeah.
When do you plan to sell DoorDash?
It's a good question. And it's also a very hard question because in my own professional prior life as a professional allocator, and also since I have been investing after high school, it is very apparent. I have experienced this, and other people have said it. It's very hard to buy the stock back once you sold it. That is one. But on the other side, I also understand buying or holding on to your expensive stock can result in either no return or even lose money. So I have to basically hold two opposing ideas at the same time. And then to fully answer your question, I think about the framework that I just described to you early on. Great fundamentals, attractive valuations, high certainty. Either one of the three or a combination, which means more than one, a combination of the three are missing from an investment. That would be a very big signal for me to either trim or completely liquidate an entire investment. So I hope that is a full answer for you.
It is. How does DoorDash fit in your portfolio, and what is your portfolio framework, portfolio construction framework? Do we have an algorithm that's doing all the work for you based on the codes you've written, or how do you think about your portfolio?
Yeah, I started my investing process or investment journey, this current journey, by trying to do things that make sense. And I realized that one of the many reasons that it's very hard to consistently outperform. And I give you this example in order to answer your question. I just want to say that. I give you an example that one of the many reasons it's very hard to outperform the index is how most people structure their portfolio. Here's an example. Imagine we have investors coming to us say, oh, I run a highly concentrated portfolio with 10 different stock, equal weighted, 10% each, 10 different stock. It sounds like a typical portfolio that people would call relatively concentrated. And Tillman, you probably also know this. The hitting ratio or hit rate of an average investor is actually not very high. There are some empirical evidence, and I hope somebody had done some research, but I would say on average, a very good investor's hit rate is probably only 55, somewhere between 50 and 60%. Meaning you recommend 10 stocks, you probably get 6 stocks right. Legendary investor, the hit rate probably can be in the zone of 70, 80%. And for a not that good investor, probably we're talking about hit rate that's materially under 50%, meaning all the stock recommendation he or she going to make, you can assume almost all going to be wrong. So that is the reality we operate in. And for a 10 stock portfolio, imagine if you are a good investor, let's say 60%, I cut him some slack, 60% hit rate, you're going to get 6 stock working for you and 4 stock not working. All right, and this is not going to be rocket science. 4 stock not working, 6 stock working. 4 are losing, 6 are making money. The 4 losing stock probably going to cancel out 4 winning stock. Your portfolio, this kind of portfolio, is doing internal cancellation. 4 cancel out 4. You get 2 winning stock left. 20% of your portfolio is left. And you want to outperform the index. Beta. You need to have these 2 stocks have a beta of 5 in order for such a portfolio just to match index performance. Then the question is, how likely for any investor first to have a hit rate of 60%, then in a 10 stock portfolio, successfully hold on to, identify and then hold on to 2 stocks that can run at 5 times the speed of the index, then only to match the stock index. That is how difficult investing is. As that's how I would say textbook knowledge or conventional structured portfolio is very, very hard to outperform index. And back to your question, like how I think about portfolio composition. I think it is critical that we mentally separate 2 concepts. One is payoffs. One is odds, ODDS, odds. What we've been taught in school is that we should structure our portfolio based on the payoff model. Imagine you have a very simple spreadsheets. You have different investment ideas. You assign a likelihood the investment idea go right, a likelihood the investment idea go wrong. You assign a payoff, right? Winning dollar, losing dollar. You do the simple average, right? Percentage likelihood times the payoff. You get an expected return, quote unquote. That is what we've been taught at school. And a lot of people use this framework to guide their investment decisions. I have seen that a lot in my prior life as well. I argue this process has practical problem in actual execution. Let me extremize with one extreme example. Let's say, Tillman, I come to you with a great investment idea. This idea, 50% of the chance is going to go up 10 times in the next year. And the other 50% of the chance is going to go to 0 for next year. And Tillman, you and I are trained by standard financial textbook. We go home and build a spreadsheet. 50% go 10x, 50% go 0. Expect to return 5x. We follow textbook knowledge. Man, 5x expect return. That's better than anything I know. Are you going to put all your money in such an idea because expected return is not so good? Of course not. Who gonna bet all their portfolio, all their money on something 50% chance go to 0 next year? However, if we blindly follow expected return framework, we're gonna get into those situations. And in actual investing, I have seen some cases, I studied investing early in my life, so I also have learned a lot of lessons. I paid the quote-unquote tuition early in my life. Is if we don't think about those scenarios of massive, super large-scale loss, it's going to do extreme harm onto a portfolio. Everybody knows on this program, if your portfolio is down by a very large number, it will take a lot to recover. So this is the drawdown, the problem of the expected return or the payoff framework. And therefore, in structuring my portfolio, I think about odds, ODDS, a lot. What is the odds something goes wrong? And let me give you also an extreme example just to illustrate the point. So let's say we have an investment opportunity that's on weather. We already use weather in this program. So we can make a bet of whether over the next 3 years, Berlin's summer weather going to be hotter, warmer than Berlin's winter weather. And you can make, let's say, 20% out of this investment if you get it right, meaning it's hotter in the summer. And you will lose, say, 20%. Or you can even lose all your money if summer turns out to be colder than winter. we have this investment opportunity. Okay, betting summer is hotter or warmer for Berlin. In this kind of investment opportunity, I argue we can make very, very, very large bet on those investment opportunity. Or if someone has the guts to do it, if you have 20% return in a year betting Berlin summer weather, you should go and borrow money to make this bet. Because unless something catastrophic happens onto this planet, summer weather is going to be warmer than winter, especially if you average over 3 years, make it even safer. So that is the odds framework. Sure, if the summer turned out to be colder than winter, we lose everything. What's the odd that happens? It may happen, I'm saying when we're recording this in 2024, it may happen, but the odds is very low from what we can sense and analytically understand. So I use this kind of framework to inform my portfolio construction. So in my portfolio, I tend to size up investments that has a kind of profile that I described to you, and size down the investment with the other kind of profile that I described you, meaning if an investment has a very large chance to have very large drawdown, that has to be downsized as much as I should put this way. At least let me reframe it. It has to be sized very cautiously so that it doesn't bring extreme harm to the portfolio.
So did you reduce then DoorDash when it went up more and more because the odds were worse, or?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Thank you. Then thank you for your answers till now. I'm done with my questions, but for the end of the interview, I always want to give you the chance to add anything we haven't discussed.
Tilman, I do like to share a little bit of my learning on risk management.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So my current understanding of risk management, obviously my understanding will continue to evolve, and I hope so as well. My current understanding of risk management is risk management investing is not about making fewer mistakes, but it is about making fewer large mistakes. Losses on a very large scale of a permanent nature should be avoided at all time, at all cost as well. And losses in minuscule amounts actually, I think, should be welcomed because they are the results of a learning process. And for active investors, by being active, making mistake is basically inevitable. So in this process, back to what I said just now, it is really about making sure no extreme large-scale mistake to take place. But we should be very welcome, I argue, to continuously to lose very small, minuscule amount of money here and there, everywhere. That help me learn. That I think help me understand how I'm not good at doing what I think I'm good at doing, how I'm not doing enough work while I thought I have done enough work. And those small mistakes is a very good part of a dynamic learning process. So that, I think, is currently how I see risk management.
Thank you. So to sum it up, we can only start a small bakery together. Otherwise, it might be a too big mistake if we go all one. Yeah.
Good point.
Thank you to the audience for staying till here, and thank you for coming on, Jackson. It was my pleasure. And now it's time to say bye-bye. And
take care.
Bye.
Bye.
I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please leave a like and a comment, and for sure subscribe to my channel. Traditionally, I want to close this conversation with the disclaimer. So here you can find the disclaimer. It says, please do your own work. This is no recommendation. What we are doing here is just a qualified talk that helps you, but it's no recommendation. Please always do your own work. Thank you and hope to see you in the next episode. Bye bye.